What's up, guys? I'm Chris Reynolds, Charlotte 49er all-time leading passer and professional quarterback. I'm calling all quarterbacks to take their game to the next level, not only physically, but mentally. With 50 career starts and thousands of snaps under my belt, I've experienced many of the do's and don'ts of this game. Join me for a one-on-one quarterback session to improve your biomechanics that allows us to throw with more velocity, accuracy, and efficiency. Have a better understanding of defensive scheme and strategy, and create more efficient footwork. Or join me on Sundays at New Age Athlete from 10 to 11 for a Sunday group recovery and polish to recharge the batteries for a new week. When it comes to film study, I offer in-season, one-on-one, Zoom, or in-person sessions to have a better understanding of how opponents try to attack us and to evaluate your play so we can improve for the following week. All options are on my Calendly link, calendly.com/Chris Reynolds QB, or you can find more information on my Instagram page at Chris Reynolds QB Training. I have a deep passion for this game, and I'm excited to take everything that I learned to take the younger QBs to another level. As always, roll Niners.
Welcome back to the Highway 49 podcast. We are back with episode 88 of the show. Every time I say this number, it just feels like it's such a gigantic number. I think I looked back the other day, and I think your guys' first episode on was low 20s, maybe 23. So we've been doing this for a minute now. But as always, we've got a lot to hit on today's show. Charlotte's loss against Tulane, some of the quarterback struggles, penalty issues, bye week fun, what they'll need to do to qualify for a bowl game. We're going to talk about hoops for a few minutes as both men's and women's tipped off last night. And we're going to close the show with a mailbag. But as always, let's hit the best thing we've seen this week. Hannah, you go ahead.
Oh gosh, for me, I would just say last week as a whole was just probably one of the best weeks I've had ever. I had 4 games in 4 days, and it just really kind of makes you feel grateful for, all the opportunities you have, and just like continuing to grow in this industry, as you guys know. I mean, it's just always awesome to kind of like have that moment of like reflection and just think about how far you've come in like 3 years since like graduation. And but it was really fun. High school football was just electric on Friday. It was 9 seconds left to go in the fourth quarter and like an outright conference championship title on the line, and just super exciting. And then Elon won for the first time at home, so it's just a super great weekend. And the Panthers won, 1 point win over the Saints. We'll take it. I don't care as long as we beat the Saints. I'm okay with it. So it's just a super fun week overall. So it's just the best thing that I have seen. So Jeremy, what about you?
Hannah's being grateful. I'm coming in on my hater stuff. Um, Hunter walked into my trap
Oh,
after I was talking
oh,
crazy
What
about
trap?
Wii bowling. He walked into my trap and
Wait, I missed the
absolutely
Wii bowling competition.
he did because you were working on was it was Friday night. Remember I told you to
Oh,
come over.
right, right, right.
Um,
We
but
still we still have to do our
oh yeah,
Wii bowling.
save the date for sure. But
Oh, it's sick.
man, him and his friend, what's it called? Like ran circles around to the point where
But I thought you were really good.
I thought so too, Hannah. I thought so too. What was her name again, Hannah? I mean, Hunter. Sorry, I don't want to mess up.
Morgan. Yeah, Morgan.
Morgan was flexing on me after the third round of bowling. It got tough out there. So you awoke a demon in me. I will be grinding, putting
Revenge
the
tour.
hours in. Yeah, grinding in Wii bowling. But on a serious note, like Hannah said, it was just a busy, busy week, Wednesday through Sunday. Like she said, the Panthers got a win. I was leaving the Panthers Stadium, getting the elevator, I'm going down, and I'm going from 4 to 1. It stops at 3. Bryce Young walks in and it's just him and I going down there by ourselves. And I was like, man, like I wrote down in my notes, hey, this is the game, this is the drive to flip the fan base back onto your side, kind of like the drive Trexler Charlotte had, and it was just cool to see that happen and just encapsulate and kind of finish off a great week. So yeah, sharing the same sentiments Hannah had, and Hunter and I have some beef that we still got to work out. But Hunter, what's the best thing you've seen for the week?
Yeah, I only had one, but now I definitely have two. The best thing that I've seen was Jeremy's bowling form on Wii Bowling. He's
Oh
out there
yeah. Oh
looking
yeah.
like basically Pete Weber. It is official. So now that was hilarious. And the second thing, first kind of a full circle thing that Hannah was talking about. Alex Highsmith was the first player I ever interviewed. I've talked about that before, but he sent me a jersey, so that was sick. Got the autograph, so pretty cool. Kind of like a full circle moment, just as Hannah mentioned, like reflecting. Yeah, definitely. Best thing I've seen. The worst thing I've seen though was Charlotte Thursday night. Let me step back. So the ESPN presence, Charlotte's move to the American has done wonders for the brand of this program. Like having Sports Center hosts on your campus for the first time, and that's the second time ever Charlotte's played on the main ESPN channel. The first was the Bahamas Bowl back in 2019. Um, it sucks because the results of those games were very similar. Charlotte hasn't really shown up on that big stage yet, and this past Thursday night, Halloween, was another example of that. Um, because it's tough, right? You get in these moments and you want to deliver. You want to, if you're not going to get these wins, you want to be competitive. And Thursday's nights, outside of the first quarter, which is a low scoring game, and we'll dive into all of that. Tulane ran over Charlotte. Charlotte looked unprepared on offense. They had a ton of penalty struggles. The quarterback play was inadequate. You had a really rough go. And knowing you're going into a bye week to kind of close that gauntlet portion of your schedule. We talked about it on here. You had Navy, Memphis, Tulane. If you wanted to get a bowl game, you had to win one of them. You had to. And they were right there at Memphis, but Navy and Tulane are the more lopsided scores. And guys, let's get into it. One of the biggest moments from that game this past Thursday night was the offensive PI on Omega Blake. Kind of killed a drive that looked promising. I want to open up Jeremy first. What were your thoughts on that penalty in the moment of the game? Because that's coming off of a huge catch, be first down inside their 20, I believe. I mean, you're kind of set up to at least get 3 points on that drive.
Yeah, so I'm looking here. Hassan Wilson breaks a 33-yard run right before that to set him up into, opponent territory. Omega Blake draws a PI, and you're like, okay, wow, this is it. It's only 3-0. You have a chance to go down, respond,
Even
really
take the
make your
lead.
mark on this game. Yeah, take the lead in this game. And then Omega Blake just headbutts him. And it's like, it's so hard to defend actions like that and the time and place of when it happened. And when you think of like Omega Blake, he's not a young dude. Like he's been in college football for a while. You can't make boneheaded decisions like that. And because of that, now they have a 4th and 2. They go for it and they threw it away to the sidelines. Didn't even have a chance to put it in play for someone to make a play on it. We asked Biff the same thing, or I asked Biff, like, what do you think about that play? And he had the same, I guess, sentiments I had. Like, hey, this isn't even like, oh, this guy made a young mistake. No, you can't do that. That was just dumb. And I hate to use that word, but when you need a game like this, you can't make mistakes like that. And like we said, no margin of error. And in the first quarter, you have the biggest one of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the whole entirety of the game, it was just Charlotte sustaining drives at some points and then just shooting themselves in the foot with penalties. And at this point, at this late in the season, you should be disciplined enough to not make any stupid. I hate calling it stupid, but at this point, like you should be disciplined enough in order to, just not say anything after the whistle and just put your head down and move on. And the whole game, like Charlotte had opportunities. There were chances for them to score in the red zone, and then it was just penalty after penalty, and then they just couldn't get it done. And I want to talk about too, just the penalty on the goal line and get your guys' opinions on that because that was another opportunity for Charlotte to make something happen, and then it just didn't.
So I'll get into that in just a second. I want to go back to the 4th and 2 Jeremy was talking about. You're trailing 3-0 in the first quarter. It's pretty low scoring against a really good football team. Your defense is doing all right. Tulane opens the game with a 20 play drive. They go 80 yards in 11 minutes, and you hold them to 3. So in my mind, you won that as a defense. You didn't give up a touchdown. Like they walked all the way down the field, but it could have been worse, basically. if you can tie that game, I know the analytics say to go for it on fourth down, but if you can tie that game against a really good team, Biff Poggi said they didn't come. Basically, they weren't going out there to lose. They wanted to win the game. And I get that, but you got to think about what your team has been. And this season, your team is 7 of 21 on fourth down, 33% conversion. So those aren't great odds. And going back to last year, Biff's first year, they were 19 of 35 on fourth down. So 54% when it was mattered most. And that decision to go for it there was a little befuddling to me. Like I say, I understand the analytics say go fourth and five or less, generally in plus territory. You might that's what it says. But I think game analytics can't take in the flow of the game. And in a spot like that, I think you needed 3 points.
Yeah, and the punt before. So wrote this down too. Charlotte had a punt that got Tulane starting at the 4 yard line.
Special teams were great.
Special
Yeah.
teams started out and did their job, and that's my point where it's like there aren't many possessions where you can have a team like Tulane backed up inside the 10. You were
Yep.
Mhm.
able to do your job, force them to punt. You have good field position to start. And then that's how the drive ends. And it goes back to what Hannah was saying on the goal line too. Like you usually have 4 to 5 possessions, drives, or something in a game that is like, okay, you have to get points on this drive somehow. And they
Mhm.
weren't able to get them on any of them. And it's just a glaring issue with this team that we keep seeing over and over again.
And so that's the thing with special teams. So you're exactly right. Michael O'Shaughnessy, who has been like the highest of highs this year with 73-yard punts, winning special teams player of the week, and then the lowest of lows with 3 and 13-yard shanks. He was excellent to start the game, guys. He pinned them inside the 5 the first 2 drives in a row. Like Tulane's drives both started inside the 5. Then you get a big return from Henry Rutledge, followed by a face mask. Charlotte starting right around midfield. All these things are going the way. The field is flipped in Charlotte's favor for most of the first half. And then back to what Hannah said, you finally sustain that drive. You get down inside the 5. I think it's third and goal on the 2. You're feeling like, okay, this is your Cartavius Norton play. This is the bowling ball that you've seen for most of the year. And then Jordan Moko gets a false start. And we got a mailbag question from 1010. We're going to get into that later, but that's the game right there. So instead of 10-7 or what could have been 10-10 had you taken the field goal earlier in the action, it's you settle for the field goal, then a 29-yard field goal from Steven Rusnak, and it's 10-3 going into the half. And even at that point, you're looking at it and saying, we're not playing a good game offensively, and we're not getting blown out. The defense, as Jeremy said multiple times on the show, the defense is doing its job. You have to be able to score on offense. And when you start making mistakes, like we're about to get into some of the quarterback play here, making mistakes like throwing crucial pick sixes, and like that was the nail in the coffin in this game. As soon as it got to 20-3, 13-3 after the half, your defense gets a stop out of the half. This is what I'm saying. You have the means to win this game if you can put production, or if you can have a good offensive sequence every now and then.
And not just score, it's when you score too. Like if you're down 15 in the fourth or you're down a lot in the second half and you start scoring, okay, cool. But what that does is it allows your defense zero margin of error. Because if you want to make a comeback, they can't allow any points. You want these two sides of the ball to be working at the same time, doing their part. So the defense gets a stop, offense gets some points. Defense can go back out there and still know, hey, even if we don't maybe limit a touchdown, at least we know the offense is still revving, that they're at least getting something. But them going out there and knowing, wait, we have nothing.
Yeah.
Going out here, we have no help on the other side. So maybe you start gambling to try and get a pick or do something, and that ultimately hurts you even more because you're not getting that production from the offense.
And we talked about Tulane not being a good fourth quarter team, but Charlotte is usually a great fourth quarter team, and we saw no action on offense, any production. And by that point, I feel like the confidence was just depleted. That's kind of what it is that I was seeing on the field is just there was no play action, the defense was tired, and there was just a lack of energy, a lack of consistency and discipline all around.
It's one of those things where the leash is so incredibly short at quarterback now. And we talked about this all of last season with Jalen Jones and Trexler Ivy, that we're back to that, basically. If you throw a pick, you're out. And I ran into a Tulane coach after the game, and spoke with him for a minute. He's an assistant coach. And I said, what did you think of the Charlotte quarterback situation coming in? Because there's been so much back and forth. He said, this is a direct quote. We knew one was okay and one was bad. And the stat lines in this game are both bad. And it's troublesome when you look at Deshaun Purdy, 5 of 12, 66 yards and a pick. He looked okay at spots in that first half. He made a couple really good throws to Omega, was able to extend some plays. He had a pretty tough face mask after a really nice scramble down Charlotte's sideline that called it back and killed one of those drives. But after that pick six, you knew he was done for the day. I just, if you make a mistake as a quarterback, just the feeling of knowing that if you do make a single mistake, you have no chance at redemption just is tough, man. Like, how are you supposed to find any kind of groove or get in any sort of rhythm when anything that you do that's incorrect or any sort of mistake is kind of the wrap for your game? Like they make the switch. I think it was in the third quarter, midway through the third. Max Brown comes in, and the remainder of the game, he goes 2 for 10 for 3 yards. It's like you're not getting
The
anything.
sideline, Tulane's sideline was catching more balls than the Charlotte wide receivers when he
Yeah,
came in.
John Summerall, their head coach, is, I mean, Max was dealing out there basically. And when you look at it, man, I want to talk about the running backs really fast because Charlotte's running game is okay. And this is what I wrote in my story. If you look and say, or if you look and see that Charlotte's averaging 5.5 yards per carry, would you not think that Charlotte maybe won the time of possession without just completely blind for the rest and say, okay, they had an all right game? In my mind, if I see a team averaging over five a clip, how do you go away from that? And someone like Hassan Wilson, so he had his first career fumble at Navy a couple weeks prior. Biff said he was in the doghouse against Memphis in the force, or he played 5 snaps at Memphis, scored in that game, comes back in this game and averages 11.3 yards per carry. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Like one fumble in your career, they have to find a way to run the ball. They only ran it 22 times on Halloween, Thursday night. And I understand when you're trailing start to finish in a game, it's easy to begin to abandon the ground game, but that is your offense. Get 5 yards on first down, short pass on second down, try and open up the play action game. That is who Charlotte is. They are not a spread it out team. They don't have the consistent quarterback play. They need these early down runs to set up favorable situations. And they don't have that when you abandon the ground game. Hassan ran the ball 6 times, Cartavius Norton 5, Teron Kelman 4. Otherwise, it's Max Brown and Deshaun Purdy, and a lot of these are scramble drills. So if you are going to be a ground and pound team, which in your best game this season, 307 yards against ECU, you very clearly were, you have to commit to that. And there's been no commitment and no identity on this team. And I think that's why you see a 3-6 record. It's just you're at this point in the season where you're going into your second bye and you still don't really know the ceiling of the offense. You have no idea.
Were you the one who asked Hassan about the quarterbacks and his thoughts on that? Can you touch on that for a second?
Yeah. And he took a long pause and pretty much looked at the ceiling. And I'll plug some of the audio here.
I mean, I feel like all the Qs can get it done. We just really trying to find that one spark. I know it's frustrating. I think it's frustrating for the whole team, honestly. I don't think it's just the Qs because it's not just them. They're not the only one out there. So I think it's just a team thing. We gonna pull it together though. I have faith in that.
But it's pretty clear, like, there is no consistency. And the most important position on the field, they've played 3 guys this year in reliever roles now. Three guys with starts, 3 guys in reliever roles. We know who the two are now. It's Deshaun and Max. But there's just no consistency. And when you're talking about an 18-year-old kid, a true freshman, if you're going to build around him, if he is going to start for you, there has to be something to give him that confidence level. And throwing a pick six and not getting any more, I guess, like opportunity to really show. Like I believe Deshaun got one drive after that, if I remember correctly. This game feels like an eternity ago now. I don't know why it feels so long ago.
Yeah.
But Deshaun did get one more drive after that. But even in it's just tough, man.
Can you name one team that's above 500 in college football that still doesn't know who their starting QB is week 9, week 10, week 11?
No
Is there
idea.
one? And now we get into the problem where if you're another team looking to recruit Deshaun Purdy, right? You're saying, hey, we saw your tape. We saw that you showed some flashes. We like your potential. You're still super, super young. And we can promise that we won't pull you after a mistake like
Mhm.
Charlotte is. If you go to someone like Max Brown and you say, hey, we know what you did at UF. We know you got injured. You came back. You're not really the same, but you were playing pretty well in the first 2 games. Well, if you come here, we'll give you that chance. We will make sure you don't have someone that's kind of, behind you waiting for you to mess up to take your turn. It just seems like at this point, both QBs have a reason to not be here next year based off how this entire thing has been handled.
Yeah, and that's scary when you come into this season and that's what this team is needed is a leader and a quarterback. I mean, Coach Poggi said that last year at the end of the season. He said, we're going to go into the portal and we're going to get a quarterback. And now they have Deshaun Purdy and they have Max Brown, and we spent all this money for Max Brown to be here. And I mean, obviously getting injured and then not finding his rhythm in his past 2 games returning after that injury, and then Deshaun Purdy having some flashes. And I still think, in my personal opinion, that Deshaun Purdy looks more comfortable with Charlotte's offense than Max Brown does. I mean, watching that game against Tulane, yes, I mean it's obvious that there was no offensive consistency, but he looked comfortable in the pocket and he seems to just gel a little better with the team. That's just my personal opinion. I mean, he loves his connection with Omega Blake, that's for sure. But like Hunter said, you definitely have to form an identity, and there's no identity for this team. And you have, the guys to carry the football. And I think we need to see a little bit more rushing the football.
Yeah, absolutely. Going from offense to defense, though, because I have down here that the QB is making plays over and over outside the pocket. So Charlotte was, collapsing the pocket. QB gets out, and same thing that we saw with the Panthers on Sunday until they finally got home on like the second to last play of the game was that Charlotte is allowing or making the QB get out the pocket, having to scramble, extend the plays. Good job. But they're not able to get him on the ground. Always, it's a hand that's a little too far out of the way. He scrambles out. Or he's about to get tackled and a block comes in and takes him out. There's always something that stops the QB from getting sacked. And time again, we saw that QB just make plays and third and down or third and 8, third and whatever. Hey, I'm going to extend the play. I'm going to make a play. And the clock keeps ticking. The drive goes again. The chains keep moving, and Charlotte cannot overcome that.
A stat to back that up. So Menza, their quarterback, who is a redshirt freshman, so still pretty young dude. He had an average of 2.87 seconds to throw, which you think, I mean, that's almost 3 seconds, pretty good. When there was pressure, he had over 4 seconds. So he was making them miss, generating almost a second and some change of time to scramble and make that throw. And I talked about the 20 play drive to open the game. Tulane had drives of 20 plays, 14 plays, 10 plays, 13 plays. Their average time of possession was 5 minutes and 11 seconds per drive. They won the time of possession battle 42-18. Think about that. When you think of Charlotte football, at least with this regime, it's ball control, play sound defense, and try and play and win low scoring games. And Tulane played their game at an elite level. They came into Jerry Richardson Stadium on ESPN on Halloween night and played Charlotte's game and dominated them in it. And it's tough when you look at it because Charlotte gets one field goal on the game and that's it. I mean, they had 2 3 and outs. It was tough. And the defense, we talked a lot about the defense being bend but don't break, and they made some good plays early in the game. But even in these situations, Tulane was 11 of 16 on third down. Like, you're not getting off the field when you need to. So Charlotte's offense isn't giving you anything. The defense plays all right the first 2 downs. Third down is like a free for all. They have 3 games left this year. They're sitting at 3-6. They have to win all 3. And it's, in my mind, this is a favorable part of the schedule, but South Florida is still really good. Charlotte hasn't won at FAU since 2018, and that was Jonathan Cruz hitting a 50-plus yard field goal in Brad Lambert's last game as head coach. This was before the Will Healy era. This is that long ago now. And then UAB, who's been so up and down this season. And that's the thing too. We talked about it a little bit off air, but like Rice beat Navy this past week. Like this league, anyone can beat anyone on any given Saturday, and Charlotte's going to have to find a way in the last three. Like I said, three easier games. The combined record of the last three teams, USF, FAU, UAB, is 8-16. So these are winnable games for Charlotte. They do have a chance to do this, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again. 2019, Charlotte was 2-5 and won their last five to go to a bowl game. So they have to win three here. This is a favorable-ish portion of the schedule, so it is possible, but they're going to have to find some sort of success and consistency at quarterback because you're really not going to beat anyone without that.
I mean, looking forward to South Florida, I know it's a bye week. They're 4-4. They're in the same boat. Like we have to win these games to reach our bowl game. So it's not like these teams just because they're bad are gonna, bend over backwards and allow you to just walk over them. You're going against teams that are also in a do or die mentality. So I guess we'll see what happens in 2 weeks.
I don't know if you guys saw, and I'll see if I can tag the video under this, but FAU and USF played this past week, and Alex Golesh, USF's head coach, and Tom Herman, who's FAU's head coach, very clearly have beef. Like Galesh
Oh,
blows by the handshake. Herman is following him, chirping at him. Uh,
yeah.
I might need a South Florida Floridian. Maybe Eric can give us some enlightenment on this, Jeremy. But I got to figure out what's going on with that because that's a wild looking beef.
Yeah, that's nuts. I have a friend who's doing like some law, I guess, internship for USF. Let me see if I have any inside sources I can find, but I have no clue. Coaching beefs are one of the best beefs,
I love it.
right? Because it's got to be all formal and
Yeah.
all that type of stuff. So I love it. But do you guys want to hop into this mailbag?
Yeah.
Let's
Let's
before we hit that, let's hit college hoops.
Oh
Hannah,
yes, yeah.
Charlotte men's and women's hoops tipped off last night. Talk to us about what's going on at Helton Arena.
Are you ready to elevate your school spirit? Look no further than onecampusco.com. Whether you're in the classroom, on the field, or cheering from the stands, we're dedicated to bringing academics, athletics, alumni, and fans together. Founded by our alumni-owned parent company, One Chapter in 2021, we recognize the need for quality apparel at reasonable prices and created a shopping experience that connects fans with their university. Join us in showcasing your pride and giving back to your community. With onecampusco.com, you're not just a student, athlete, or fan, you're part of a vibrant family. Together, let's celebrate what makes our university special. Visit us at www.charlotte.onecampusco.com using promo code HWY49 for 10% off. Yeah, so both men's and women's last night won against Presbyterian. So the women's won 77-63. And I watched a little bit of the game, and this looks like a really aggressive women's team. I know in a couple seasons past, I think that's what Niner Nation has been looking for, and it's kind of different, not seeing Deja Lawrence on the team and, Coach Kara being there, but I really think this Tomika Reed era is going to be great for the Niners. She's brought in a lot of depth on her roster. I mean, we got to hit men's real quick. They won 88-79 against the Blue Hose. What a name. That's kind of a fun name too. But yeah, a lot of transfers bringing in this year. It was kind of different not seeing Igor out there, Jackson Threadgill. I mean, obviously Lukai. It was just a little different, but man, Robert Braswell, he had a day. It was really good to see him kind of come into his own. He had 18 points, which might be a career high for him. I need to look at the stats on that, but he he looked like he was doing really good. I mean, Isaiah Folks coming in, making a really great slam dunk, what he does best. So it should be fun to watch. I'm excited to see what they do as they move on in conference play. Really, really tough schedule in conference play. FAU does come back to Charlotte. Should be fun to watch. But Rich Roth, he's a player to watch too. He scored 15 points last night, and then Rosato Giancarlo We talked a little bit about him with Coach Fern earlier on this year, and he had 16 points. So should be a fun team. Excited to see more what they do as they move into their schedule. But women's hoops is back at Halton Arena on Thursday. They play Wake Forest, so should be a fun one.
Yeah, the main thing I saw from that box score is Charlotte had 5 in double figures, which is definitely a Fern style of basketball. Spread it out, figure out who it's going to be. And yeah, I was definitely shocked to see Rich Rolfe with 15. So shout out to him. But yeah, looking forward to following them this season, and always good to get off to a win. But Jeremy, you foreshadowed this, so let's hit the freaking mailbag. It's go time.
All right, we got mail, guys. Let's get into this mailbag. So, Fairway Frank asked, is it even worth discussing and debating who should be quarterback week to week at this point?
Hmm.
Repeat that one more time for me.
Is it even worth discussing and debating who should be quarterback week to week at this point?
I think so, not for this season, but for next season.
Yeah.
Because whoever is quarterback, the quarterback controversy will be the ultimate factor for who is under center in 2025, 2026, or I guess the 2025 season. So, yes, in the micro, I'd say no. It's a really tough schedule. I mean, actually, the 3 games left, not crazy, but I would say for next year it is. Right now, you need to have some offensive production. It doesn't matter who it comes from.
I think it's kind of coming back down to earth on the NIL side of things. Max Brown has not looked like the quarterback many expected, including myself before the season. Deshaun Purdy has shown some flashes. He's really raw. The deep ball is very good. He's got to work on that short to intermediate part of the field. He's got to work on his reads, being able to move from one to another. I think there's more promise with Purdy, and I think you start him the rest of the way. That's what I think you stick with him, and that's your guy.
I agree with that 100%. I think we've seen more production from Purdy, and we've talked about, other schools looking at him. And at this point, you just ride with the guy who is giving you the most productivity.
Yeah, absolutely. And Hunter, you said that Max hasn't played to what you thought he was going to be. He hasn't played to what Biff Poggi thought he was going to be. He called this guy a Ferrari, said
Yeah.
he's like a program changer. And right now he's in a QB controversy with a true freshman. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, that's my answer.
And it could very well be that it just might not be Charlotte's offense that he works the best with. So
Exactly.
who knows? But I do think it's worth, debating week to week. Tintin. We love Tintin. Shout out to him. He asks, what percentage of our penalties are procedures on offense and offsides on defense? And can we stop doing so much pre-snap movement to prevent some of this?
All right, so this was a good question, and I hadn't dove into the penalty aspect until today, so I appreciate him asking this. All right, so we got the notebook out. We got all 9 games so far. Charlotte's averaging over 7 penalties a game for 61 yards. Four of those penalties a game are coming on the offense alone. And the breakdown as far as pre-snap, like procedural penalties, what is this? Delay a game, an illegal shift, a false start, and then offsides on defense. That accounts for 30 of Charlotte's 70-ish penalties, which is about 43%. So 43% of their penalties are pre-snap motions or offsides, or pre-snap procedural penalties or offsides. So all of this, and this is a great point from 1010, this is coaching, okay? All of that goes back to coaching. Your guys have to know not to jump off sides, especially when to jump off sides. Your offensive linemen have to have the wherewithal to not jump. There has to be, like he asked about the shifts, right? There was a shift in the game the other night. I think it was on Omega. A big play comes back because of I guess he doesn't get set. Either way, he runs across the field, doesn't set, runs back, never sets. Initially when it happened, I was confused because I'm like, hey, there's plenty of plays where the ball is snapped but the receiver is still in motion. But at one point in the play, he has to be set, and he never was, even initially before the motion. So that's a mental error. That's stuff that they have to clean up, and especially coming off of another bye week, that's the time. But the craziest thing to me is this, and this is like a little bit of trivia for just you two. Charlotte was penalized 13 times for 103 yards in a game this season. Can you tell me what game it was?
Oh,
I'm just gonna go with Gardner Webb because I don't know how they were down in that game. Probably wrong, but that's my answer.
that
Anna?
makes that makes sense actually. I feel like it's an away game though.
ECU.
Ah,
Trick question, huh?
When you put up 55, and in that game they had 104 offensive yards overturned or like basically wiped out. Literally penalized 13 times for 103 yards. That's insane in a 31 point victory. So they both played their best game and their worst penalty wise, discipline wise. It's tough, man. They haven't had a game this year where they're penalized less than 5 times. So it's not been clean football. They've got that's the only double digit penalty game is ECU. And it's crazy because that's their biggest and most decisive win in the Biff Poggi era. So little microcosm, but kind of wild.
that's kind of crazy. Wow. Thanks for that golden little nugget of a stat there, Hunter. But Vidman asked, if we lose, does Biff lose his job?
Um, I don't think so. But if they lose out in this final 3 games, then I think it's worth talking about. They have to show progress. I think that if they're not going to make a bowl game this year, they got to win 5 games. They have to beat FAU. They have to beat UAB. Those are winnable games for where this program is. And when you look at the schedule is missing teams like Temple and Tulsa and struggling teams. They have played literally the best teams in the league this year. And they had 3 of them right in a row. So it's definitely not been an easy slate, and it's not getting easier next year. Um, I can't imagine Mike Hill is going to make this move, but we did talk about them extending his contract. That 4 extra years, that's a whole nother coaching cycle. That's through 2030 in my mind. So they're going to have to win a couple more games for it to be completely safe, in my opinion.
Valid question. I'm not worried about Biff being fired. I think there's a lot of investment there. I think this is more about is Biff gonna walk away because this isn't what he expected. We heard him, I know this is a year ago, have the warpath speech. If
Yeah.
we're not playing the style of football that I want to see, the product I want to see on the field, if we're not making bowl games, he just talked about how coaches don't want to go to teams or players don't want to go to teams that can't make bowl eligibility. I don't think his heart will be in the game if you can't create the product you want. I don't know how long that might take, if that's a year or two from now, but he has always told us, hey, bowl games matter. We want to make the college football playoff. And I know that's way too big of an ambition, but a bowl game is very realistic for when you start out 3-3. And I think this is more about Biff being like, if he goes, hey, maybe this just isn't working, rather than, the chancellor or Mike stepping in, because the investments there, like I said, Biff has good connections when it comes to NIL and boosters and things like that. He loves his school. I'm just saying, how long can your heart stay in it when you're winning 3 games every year?
Well, that's the thing because the offense has gotten marginally better a little bit. You go from 17 and a half points a game to 21 points a game. Basically, that's where you're at right now. And I said before the season, if they can get to 25 points a game on offense, that was the threshold for bowl teams in the AAC last year. No team in the league averaged less points a game and made it to a bowl. That's what you got to do. And I'm not saying if you add 4 points to all their totals that they're going to be a better team, because they're not. They're not going to win a single game more with 4 more points in any of those games. But as that compounds, and as we talked about earlier, the swing state of college, like football is like your offense produces, your defense has less pressure. And that's the thing. The offense got marginally better, the defense got significantly worse. If you had last year's defense with this offense, I think it's a bowl team. I don't think it's a like high quality bowl team, but they would have done what they needed to do. But yeah, it's I think he'll get another year to put it all together. I don't know what what the fate holds for the coordinator's sake.
Yeah, we also got to think of this happens in everything. if we're gonna start having that conversation, you've got to have a replacement. You can't just say let the top guy go and not have any idea of
Yeah.
who would be taking over that role. It's like, oh, the Bucks, you want to fire Doc Rivers? Cool. You know, Darvin Ham's the head assistant coach.
Right.
Like pick your poison there. So it's more than just a head coaching vacancy. It's like, how would you fill that spot? What's the next step? Because Mike is thinking about that, right? If there is a chance that I even want to go down that path, I need to have a better option. And if you don't, I mean, yeah, I guess you're stuck with what you have.
And I mean, we saw it on Sports Center on ESPN Thursday. Charlotte fans love Biff, right?
Yeah.
The character that he is, the type of person that he is, they just want to see wins, right? We're talking about a program that hasn't won more than 3 games since 2021. So it comes to a point where you have to start producing. And like I said, I think they've got to get a couple more games, if at least 2 of these last 3, to feel good going into next year. And you've got to see some sort of semblance of production with the quarterback position, because it's getting to a point, and like how it felt last week, for the first time all year, it was like, okay, they don't have a good option right now. And I don't think that's the case. I think Deshaun has a bright future. I think they've got to find ways to play to his strengths, um, because the opportunities this season are running out. And they've got a bye week this week. And we talked a ton about how they handled the previous bye week, spot Navy 38 points to open that game in the first half. They cannot do that coming out of this bye week against South Florida, because South Florida is a team that ran over them a season ago on their way to bowl eligibility. And Jeremy said it. This is a 4-4 football team coming to Richardson Stadium. They've got stuff to prove too. And Charlotte right now is one of those teams on the schedule that you're like, we can go in and get that game. So we'll see. 3 more opportunities left for football. But as always, we appreciate y'all tuning into the podcast. We're going to have some special Hornets content coming soon, so stay tuned. And we'll be back soon. Appreciate you guys.